as human beings, we are raised to believe that part of, if not the very meaning of our lives and existence, is to fight for success in every way conceivable. We are told that our worth is measured by the size of the legacy we build, the titles we earn, the influence we wield, and the security we stack against the unknown. In some rare cases, some of us actually achieve this. We find power, money, the influence, and the prestige that the world promises will make us untouchable and feared. We spend our youth beetling a masterpiece of a life, hoarding achievements like stones in a fortress, convinced that if we just build the wall high enough, we can keep the darkness at bay. But what happens when the very organic machines we were given at birth begin to fail us? What happens when the biological foundation of your entire world cracks and you realize that not all the money, power, or influence on earth can buy you a single minute of reprieve? What do you do when the future you've worked so hard for, the life you've built, is torn apart in an instant? This was the case for Kate Gross, and this is her story. Kate Gross was born in 1978 in the United Kingdom, a child of intellect and burning ambition. She was a woman who moved through the world with an enviable velocity, a person who didn't just participate in life, but mastered it. After graduating from Oxford, she ascended the ranks of the civil service with a speed that left her peers in awe. By her late 20s, she had reached the inner sanctum of global influence, serving as a high-level advisor and press officer at No. 10 Downing Street for 2 consecutive British Prime Ministers, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Kate was a bridge builder, a strategist, and a mother to twin boys. Her life was a soaring trajectory of next steps. She was the architect of a future that looked limitless. Kate was a bridge builder and a strategist operating in a world where a single word could shift a nation's narrative. When she left the halls of government, Kate became the founding CEO of the Africa Governance Initiative, working alongside world leaders to build functioning states from the ground up. She was a woman who lived in the corridors of power, an architect of a future that looked limitless. At home, Kate's life was equally full. With her husband Billy, she was a devoted mother to their 5-year-old twin boys, Isaac and Oscar. She moved between intellectual rigor and domestic life with a balance that, from the outside, appeared almost effortless. Unfortunately for Kate, she would face circumstances beyond her control. In 2012, at the age of 34, she was diagnosed with advanced terminal colon cancer. The woman who had spent her career planning the futures of nations was suddenly told she might not have a future of her own. This is where Kate's story shifts from a tragedy of a life cut short to a masterclass in the art of being. Kate Gross did not turn toward the typical battle imagery we associate with illness. She refused to spend her remaining days fighting a war she knew she was going to lose. Instead, she chose a path of radical observation. She became an ethnographer of her own dying. She realized that the success she had been raised to believe in was a form of sleepwalking. In the high-pressure world of politics, she had been leaning into the next hour, the next week, the next career milestone. She had been treating the present moment like a waiting room for a life that hadn't arrived yet. Her diagnosis burned away the waiting room. She described the experience as a thinning of the veil. When you know the end is near, the world becomes strangely, piercingly bright. She didn't find this brightness in grand gestures or expensive bucket lists. She found it in what she called the small things, the things we usually ignore in our race toward success. She wrote about the specific cold shock of a glass of water, the weight of her children's heads on her shoulder, the way the light hit the trees in her garden at dusk. To Kate, these weren't just distractions from her illness, they were the very point of having been born. She realized that we are so busy trying to be significant that we forget to be awake. Kate's perspective shifted radically, though her insight emerged not from serenity, but from the shock of sudden transition. She had once curated status, career, and achievement only to realize, with unsettling clarity, that they were weightless. The only thing that carried weight was the intensity of her attention. She used her professional skills, the very eloquence she had used to shape the narratives of prime ministers, to dismantle the awkwardness society feels around death. She didn't want the pitying tilt of the head. She wanted a conversation that was as exact and unsentimental as she was. She wanted us to understand that mortality is not a thief that steals our meaning. It is the light that reveals where the meaning was hiding all along. Kate Gross passed away on Christmas Day in 2014. She was 36 years old. In the eyes of the world, it was an unfinished life, a career cut off at its peak. But if we apply Kate's own logic, the length of the book is irrelevant to the quality of the prose. She didn't leave behind a long life, but she left an exact one. Most of us spend our lives trying to outrun the clock, hoarding our days and waiting for a perfect version of our circumstances before we allow ourselves to be truly present. We think that if we work hard enough, we can earn a future that is safe from the void. But Kate Gross showed us the truth. The future is never safe. The only thing we truly possess is the now, for we live not in the duration of our years, but in the intensity of our attention. The finality of the end is not a punishment for having lived. It is the very thing that makes the experience a singular, unrepeatable work of art. What matters is not how long a life stretches, but how fully it is inhabited in each passing moment. Attention becomes the only true measure of presence, the only lasting form of ownership we ever have. And in that light, even a life cut short is not diminished, but complete in its own right.